Now, a court will soon be ruling on whether a transgender man who gave birth to a child can be named as the child's father on the birth certificate. Freddy McConnell, who's 32, transitioned from female to male before giving birth to a child last year. And significantly, Freddy McConnell was granted a gender recognition certificate before he went to the fertility clinic and before he gave birth to this child, which means that he was legally male when his child was born. But when he went to register the child, the officials there insisted that he should be registered as the child's mother. And he objects to this. He's going to court. He's in court. The court case has already been heard and we're expecting a ruling very soon. Some people think even by the end of this week we'll get a court ruling, which may be a first for the UK, when the person who gave birth to a child is legally registered as the child's father. And you'd have a birth certificate there with no mention of any mother because this was a donor pregnancy. Let's talk about that. And you can tell us if you think the court should rule that way to allow Freddy McConnell to be registered as the father in this case. 03030 80 55 55. Let's talk about it with Gavin Boyd from the Rainbow Project here and the writer and columnist with Conservative Home, Caroline Farrow. Welcome. Good afternoon to both of you. Caroline, let me come to you first. What do you think of this case?
I just think it's ludicrous, actually, and I really hope that the court rule against Freddy McConnell, because actually this child already has a father. Admittedly, the father's a sperm donor, but it makes a complete mockery of our legal system. It's just a complete legal fiction. You know, it's only biological women who can give birth to children. And I think a birth certificate is not about validating the feelings of other people. A birth certificate is there as a matter of public record. This is what happened. A child was born to this person, and a child cannot be physically born to a man. And therefore, I think if this ruling goes ahead, it's going to undermine public trust, public confidence in our legal system, in our judiciary, because everybody knows the truth. Everybody knows that women, it's only women who can give birth to babies. Men cannot give birth to babies. And also, I think it's quite interesting, there are some transgender activists themselves who are questioning this, because they say, you know, it actually kind of undermines their position that, you know, they feel that they were born in the wrong body. And then, you know, they're so repulsed by the body they're in, they feel the only way they can get by in life is to change it. And yet you cannot get anything more quintessentially feminine than going through a pregnancy and giving birth. So, you know, and it kind of makes people question what is going on here. You know, is this some kind of pretense? You know, I think it actually undermines, you know, people want to actually, you know, there is goodwill towards the transgender community. And I think people want to give individuals who are struggling the benefit of the doubt. But this just seems about, you know, pushing at the margins, and fundamentally as well, erasing women from biology.
So you think the court should rule that Freddy McConnell be named as the mother of this child?
Absolutely, and I think the child deserves that.
Even though he has a legal certificate confirming that he's male, he'd be a male mother.
But I think this demonstrates actually the legal fiction that is involved in the Gender Recognition Act, because here you have somebody who's getting pregnant and giving birth to a baby and claiming to be a man. Well, clearly biologically they are not a man, and you know, right. We've actually got the law indulging and confirming in fantasy.
Gavin Boyd.
Well, I think Caroline has been very helpful here in articulating that this isn't about Freddy. This isn't about Freddy's child. This is about an orchestrated campaign of anti-transgender activists who are really trying to repeal the Gender Recognition Act. That's what all of this boils down to. That's what all of this commentating boils down to, is they actually want to repeal the Gender Recognition Act and push trans people back into the margins and make them invisible and make them unable to be recognised as who they are in law. I think what Freddy's case really helpfully articulates is the fact that our system of registering births in the UK is ridiculously antiquated. It doesn't just impact on trans people, but it impacts on lesbian mums who give birth by IVF and the struggles that they have to go to register two mums on a birth certificate. The cases of two dads to be able to be registered as the two dads of their child. a birth certificate is about accurately reflecting the nature of a child's birth and their parentage. And Freddie is this child's father. He was male at the time of the child's birth. No one is disputing that, apart from people who dispute the fact that trans people exist. And this child has the absolute right to have their parentage recognised the way it accurately was at the time that they were born.
Well, I guess we can test that. Caroline, do you accept that Freddie is male?
No, I don't, and
So,
I think,
thank
but
you.
that's not the same thing, though. As well, 2 points actually. This isn't about it's trying to stop people from living the lives that they want to. No, it's not. It's not about stopping people from trying to lead the lives they want to lead. Far from it. Nobody wants people to face unfair prejudice or discrimination. But the fact is, I mean, you've got Gavin there saying that the baby has, that Freddie is a man, but Freddie gave birth to a child. A man cannot give birth.
But he did.
To children. But he didn't.
He did.
He didn't.
He did.
A biological woman gave birth to a baby. Men do not give birth to babies. You find me a single biologist, a single doctor, a single medic who will actually say that biologically, a biological man cannot give birth to a baby. That is fact. And this shows how much we're having language manipulated. A man cannot give birth. I mean, it's like living. You can say he did, or
you can say he didn't, but he did.
But men cannot give birth to children.
This one did.
They cannot. You are living in Alice in Wonderland. This is some kind of topsy-turvy world that, we're claiming that things can happen that can't. Men cannot. Men are not born with a uterus. They cannot give birth. No, men are not. You're talking about biological sex here. We're not talking about gender identity and how somebody feels about themselves. The fact of the matter is that somebody who is born with a uterus and a vagina and female reproductive organs cannot then, if they give birth to a baby, they are not a biological man. What is a woman? It's an adult human female who produces female gametes, normally eggs that can be fertilized by men.
But of course, some female people don't produce gametes, right?
But children have. Every single child has a biological mother and a biological father. This child already has a father. Okay, now the mother doesn't want this father involved and wants them, written out the equation and say, actually, no, I'm the father. But this is actually involving the child in a deception. It's involving the child in something that's not true. And, in the case you mentioned lesbian mothers, in the case where you've got, say, two lesbian mothers, that doesn't actually involve telling lies to the children.
Wow.
Actually, the children get told what has happened. But in this case, you're lying to the child. You're saying, I'm actually, you don't have a mother, I'm a man and I've always been a man. And that's not true. Men do not give birth to babies.
Some do. And I think what's really interesting here is just how head up some people get about other people's families and about other people's parents. And that's really what this boils down to, because Caroline doesn't just care about this case. Caroline's opposed to same-sex adoption. Caroline's opposed to any kind of same-sex parenting.
Listen, you are just imposing. You are telling me what I think.
You have advocated for these issues over the years, Caroline. This is public record.
We can only deal with one issue at a time.
You are making this very, very personal. And actually, I have always said that if two people of the same sex are able to give a loving home to a child who doesn't have one, that's a great thing. But I also believe that every child does have a biological mother and a biological father. And to sit there and go, no, they don't, it's just in willful denial of biology. And that's what women, it's not just me, it's women and men across the world are getting het up about, because you are trying to distort language and say something is true that clearly isn't.
Can we just park the adoption thing and just stay with this one for a moment? Caroline, this claim that no men ever give birth to children. I'm looking at this medical description. Now, trans identity issues are not in the same category as medical disorders. I'm not suggesting that. But there is a medical disorder called persistent Mullerian duct syndrome. And I'll just read the description of it to you, which is a disorder of sexual development that affects males. Males with this disorder have normal male reproductive organs, but they also have a uterus and fallopian tubes, which are female reproductive organs, and have the capacity to give birth, even though biologically they are described as male. Now, that's a disorder of sexual development, but I mean, we've had an example of it in the last few years, which where I found it in the United Kingdom in the last few years, 2015, when a 37-year-old British man discovered by accident that he was pregnant, and he's not a transgender man; he's a man.
Yeah, but this is what we're talking about here is a tiny, tiny, tiny minority.
Oh, it's very, very rare. You're absolutely right.
You know,
but it's a very rare example of a man giving birth to a child.
But this is not a normal. But this is not a normal biological male.
It's a disorder.
So you are actually
no. He is a normal biological male.
Yeah, but he's not.
He has male reproductive.
But he also has female reproductive organs. So clearly there is a disorder there going on. You cannot use a very rare example of somebody with clearly a disorder.
You can use an
abnormality.
example to challenge a generalisation, can't you? A counterexample.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
One counterexample is a counterexample to a generalisation. Then you can't say all.
No, you can, because generally speaking, it is a widely understood and accepted fact, and always has been throughout history, that it is women who give birth to babies. It is generally not biological men who have male sex organs.
That's absolutely true. But men with persistent Mullerian duct syndrome have that capacity too.
Yeah, but this is a really, really rare exception.
Very rare.
Just like Freddie's case is pretty rare.
Yeah, no, but I don't think that that Freddie's case will be rare. There are people pushing the envelope, but the fact is,
and just to be clear, in case you missed it, I'm not putting Freddie's case in this medical disorder case. I'm just using that as an example that's out there. It's been in the media in the last few years, and it got a lot of attention in 2015. Disorder, but let's get some of your reaction on the phone lines to this. We're talking to Caroline Farrow and Gavin Boyd. How do you see it, Ron, in East Belfast? Hey, Ron.
I still can't get my head around this.
I think that's totally fine. And I think this is really difficult for lots of people to get their heads around. I think what this comes down to is it's really not our concern. This is about Freddie and Freddie's child. And I think what all of us really want is for this child to have the best start in life and have the best chance in life.
But it is the court's concern, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's public interest. It is. This is trying to change the law that affects everybody. So it's not just a case of it's not our concern. And actually,
how does this impact on anyone else?
Because if the law is changed to say, okay, men can give birth to children, then we are seeing, female biology being written out of language, out of discourse. We already see, we already see, you see nursing guidelines. You can't refer to pregnant women.
That's just not true.
Pregnant people.
That's not true.
No, that is true.
That's not true.
It is true. You can look it up. It's in the North American midwifery guidelines.
So what's that got to do with us?
Because actually, women do not want to be written out of language. We do not want the female reproductive system to be written out of discourse, to be written out of language. But that is exactly what is happening. Also, you are just forcing people to lie, Gavin.
I'm not forcing anyone to do anything.
You are, because you're trying to make out that men give birth to children.
Some do.
But they don't. We can have this back and forth. You can say that unicorns exist and fly out of trees, but that doesn't really mean that
transgender people actually do exist. These people exist.
Nobody is denying that transgender people exist.
So why compare them to unicorns?
Because you are giving concepts which are as fantastical as that. So we can all agree.
This is reality, like.
No, we can all agree that transgender people exist. But actually, do we have to agree that, just because somebody feels that they've changed gender, that they have actually changed biological sex? Do we have to now say that biological sex is exactly the same thing as gender? Do we have to start saying that...
Well, look, can I just point out that whichever way this court case goes will seem counterintuitive to somebody. I mean, if this court case goes the way Freddy McConnell wants it to go, that's going to seem counterintuitive to you, Caroline, because then you've got a situation of a father giving birth to a child. And if it goes the other way, it's going to seem counterintuitive to Gavin, because in that situation, you'd have the court saying that we must register a legally recognised male as a mother. So, I mean, this is complicated stuff no matter where you look, however you look at this. Let me go to Tim Hedgley, who's former chair of the National Fertility Association. How are you doing, Tim?
Hello. It is a difficult one, and I was chair quite some time ago, but I do have a sort of an insight into men and women getting pregnant. And I think where the problem lies here is the way a name is being put on somebody. Gender reassignment changes a man to a woman or a woman to a man. The difficulty about giving birth and fathering a child is something completely different. As a man, you can father a child by using your sperm to impregnate an egg. And giving birth as a woman, you have a vaginal birth or you have a cesarean birth, and you give birth. Now, a man, you can have your gender reassigned, but I can't for the life of me believe that the law lords or whoever's in charge of the case will consider...
It's a high court. It's a high court.
It's a high court. Well, I cannot believe that the high... Well, I may well be proven wrong here, but when Freddie was a woman, he gave birth.
No. Well, Freddie transitioned before becoming pregnant and has a legal recognition certificate as a man, then became pregnant. That's the order.
Yes, right. So biologically at the time, he was a woman, but legally he was a man. Isn't that's the case?
Well, I think this is actually really helpful because what is registered on the birth certificate is mother or father. And Freddie will be this child's father, not their mother. And so if we want this to accurately record the nature of this child's family, parentage and all the rest of it, then it's accurate to say that Freddie is this child's father and has been from the moment the child was born.
Tim, thank you very much. That was very helpful, very interesting. Jimmy's in Ballymena. Hello, Jimmy.
Hello.
Hi, how do you see it, Jimmy?
Well, every person on this earth is born a woman.
Born from a woman?
It comes into the earth, onto this earth, being born from a woman. So when this child asks, who is my mummy? What's it going to be told? Is it going to be led to believe that it got to this earth by some miraculous means? How's that child going to feel whenever it's told, no, your daddy's your mummy?
Well, imagine someone who was born through, a test tube birth, Jimmy, and then a surrogate mother in that sense, but the child has only ever known the mother who was raising the child rather than the surrogate mother who delivered the child. Who would be that child's mother?
When a child is born by a test tube, you can explain to that child. But how does this man tell the child he gave birth to it, or she gave birth to the child?
I think he just does exactly that. Explains to the child that families are all different. Families are messy and complicated. None of us have a super easily laid out path in this world, and that families are coming in all different shapes and sizes, and this is the shape and size of his.
Can I ask Jimmy, is your concern that this is going to confuse the child?
Yes.
That's your concern.
I'm worried for the child.
Right.
Well, I think if we're worried for the child, then what would be really helpful is if this had been allowed to continue to be an anonymised case. Because if any negativity is going to happen to this child, it's going to be because of the really horrible way in which trans people are talked about, particularly in the British media at the minute.
But this individual chose to take part in a documentary about themselves. So they seem to want to have their cake and eat it too, because on the one hand, they're inviting the publicity, saying, look, I am a transgender father. And then on the other hand, they're saying, well, I want my identity protected.
Sure. But I suppose the key distinction here is that in none of the media that Freddie's done around this has he made any kind of reference to this legal challenge, the JR, into the
But the court ruled on that one and didn't allow anonymity because they said it would be really clear. Jigsaw identification were really clear.
Sure. I'd
have it both ways, can you? You can't take part in a TV documentary and then say I want to protect my anonymity.
I think that's a fair consideration that the court considered in the proportionality test. I would have taken a different route and I would have put the child's interest more paramount within that, and I would have said that anonymity to protect the child was more important.
Well, we will wait to see. I think we might find out tomorrow or sometime next week. We'll wait to see what happens with this court judgment. My thanks to Caroline. Caroline, thank you very much. Caroline Farrow from Conservative Home and Gavin Boyd from the Rainbow Project.